What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So will the new jobs report that we just received a few days ago, will that impact people receiving Social Security benefits? And so in my opinion, eventually it will. It will impact people receiving Social Security benefits. I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's the case. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. If you watch this video and you find this information informative, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Okay, so let's go ahead. I want to talk a little bit about, first, let's talk about the new jobs report. So a new jobs report came out, and this is what it's showing us here. We have an unemployment rate right now of 4.3%. And you see it's been steadily rising. We can go back to January of 2023. It's almost increased 1 percentage point. So that's not good. That means you have less people in the workforce. And we'll talk about why that's important. Now, I want to show you this as well. When it comes to just the jobs reports that we've seen just this year, okay, so we're looking at January of 2025, it was 111,000 jobs created. In February 2025, it was 102,000 jobs created. March of 2025, 120,000 jobs created. April of 2025, 158,000 jobs created. May of 2025, we dropped down to 19,000 jobs created. And then in June of 2025, we see minus 13,000 jobs. So that means we lost 13,000 jobs. So no increase at all for that month. This is the first time since 2020 that we've seen this. So this is a big deal. July of 2025, we saw 79,000 jobs added. And then August of 2025, we saw 22,000 jobs added. Now let's talk a little bit about why this matters. So if you understand Social Security, and I will go over this again because I realize you guys all don't watch my videos. And so if you haven't caught one of my earlier videos, generally the way Social Security works is this, okay? It's pretty simple. You have FICA, okay? FICA contribution, everyone who is currently working, they're contributing to FICA. That's 6.2% that you contribute. Your employer matches that 6.2%. That money will go to pay out people who are currently receiving benefits. Now, we're in a situation right now where FICA is not enough. So the money that's coming from FICA, the people who are working and contributing to FICA, that's not enough to pay out benefits at 100%. And that's why we have two trust funds. Now, the way that those trust funds were formed is because there was a time where FICA was, we had more than enough money coming through FICA. And so they were putting that money in, just call it savings. Okay, so now that we don't have enough money coming through FICA, they're having to pull a little bit from those trust funds. Okay, so they're pulling a little bit. It's about 2.6 trillion in there right now. They're pulling a little bit every month to help pay out benefits at 100%. Now the fear is if Congress does not act, we're going to see a situation where in about 8 or 9 years, the trust funds will be completely depleted. So we'll no longer have that savings account. We'll no longer have that money where they can pull from. And so we're only going to be able to rely on the money that's coming through FICA. And if that money that's coming through FICA isn't enough to pay out at 100%, that's when everyone receiving Social Security benefits across the board, you're going to see a cut to your benefits. Now, Congress can act. They can bring in more revenue. And if they bring in more revenue, it will solve that problem when it comes to the trust funds. When I say bring in more revenue, there are different ideas that have been thrown around. One is raise the cap. So right now, people making $176,100, they no longer have to contribute to FICA. So once you hit that level, you'll pay up until that level. But once you hit that level, you no longer have to contribute. So if let's say you earn $2 million a year, you're only going to have to contribute to FICA for $176,100. Let's say you earn $1 billion a year. You're still only going to have to contribute to FICA for $176,100. And so what some politicians are talking about doing is raising that cap. Why not raise it higher? You can bring in more revenue and it will help pay out benefits to the people who are currently receiving benefits. And so that's one way that they're talking about reforming Social Security and providing enough revenue in order to not have to make any cuts to Social Security benefits at all. You have another idea that's being thrown around, and that's just raising FICA for everyone who is currently working. So right now you contribute 6.2%, your employer matches 6.2%. Why not raise that to 7.2%? And your employer matches 7.2%. Now you're bringing in a higher percentage, so more revenue is coming through FICA and going to pay out benefits. And so that's another idea that's being thrown around. And then you have other ideas that are being thrown around, like raising the full retirement age or doing away with COLA, things like that. Now, these options, they're not enough to satisfy reforming Social Security. They don't bring in revenue. All you're doing is you're basically making cuts, because let's say it's COLA. If they do away with COLA, then that's going to be cuts to people's benefits, because you're going to be receiving less. You're not going to see that increase every year. You're not going to be able to get an increase every year. And if we see inflation, let's say inflation is at 8%, well, you're not going to be compensated for that. And so your purchasing power will continue to dwindle if we see something like that. The other thing that I talked about, raising the full retirement age. For every year that you raise the full retirement age, that's like a 7% cut to your benefits. Why? Because we all have an expiration date. And let's say you have to wait. Right now you can receive it at 67, but you have to wait until you're 70. That means that those 3 years you're not going to be collecting Social Security benefits. And so that means you'll receive less benefits over your lifetime. And so that's another thing that they've been talked about. And so that's why those two options, if you hear politicians talk about those two options, your response to them should be, what else are you going to do? Because that is not enough to reform Social Security. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, you understand how Social Security works. Let's talk about unemployment. If we see unemployment at 4.3%, we see unemployment continuing to rise. What does that mean? That means you have less people in the workforce, less people that are contributing to FICA. So that's less money going through FICA to pay out benefits. And if you have less money going to pay out benefits, you still have the same amount of beneficiaries that will be receiving their checks, but you have less people actually working to contribute to FICA. And so there's the problem. Now you have to rely even more on the trust funds. And so that is where the trust funds will be depleted much sooner. And we could look at a situation where I was talking about it could be 8 or 9 years. We could be looking at a situation where now it's 6 or 7 years, because you have to pull more money from the trust funds. And so that's why it's a problem. That's why when we look at these jobs reports, this is good information that we need to be looking at, because it will let us see exactly what's going on in the job market and how many people are currently contributing. And if we start to see the unemployment rate continue to rise, that's less money that's being collected through FICA. And then not to mention, when you're seeing unemployment rise, that means those people could be receiving unemployment benefits. And if they're receiving unemployment benefits, then that's taking more money from the federal government. Okay, that's a different bank, so it's not the same bank as FICA. And then also we're seeing our economy slow down because employers aren't hiring people the way that they used to. And then one last thing is, if we see unemployment rise, that means that companies are laying people off, or they might not be hiring at the same rate. These companies can also go under. And if these companies go bankrupt, that means that FICA, they have no employees, so those employees aren't contributing to FICA, and the employer is no longer contributing to FICA because they're no longer there. So all this stuff really matters. So that's why I wanted to go over this with you guys today. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.